Welcome to the Jeremiah Show. There's something so beautiful about grandmothers. It could be how they love you without asking you to be anything to them. It could be how you feel their wisdom when you're around them and how you feel safe and secure. It could also be that you know that your time spent with them is fleeting and how, although unspoken, they also seem to understand this too. We don't get enough time with our grandmothers in this life. Imagine if we did. Imagine if we could learn from them and appreciate them just for a few more hours, a few more days, or greedily, a few more years. Grandmothers never ask anything of you. There's no pressure with a grandmother. My grandmother made me feel appreciated and loved. And most times, a grandmother's love is shown through her cooking. When I think of my grandmother, it's hard not to think of her standing at the oven or the stove, cooking some delicious smelling meal for me. In her warm kitchen, it's like a safe cocoon. I've been thinking about time a lot lately, and I don't know really how to grasp it. I know we don't have enough of it. And in the same context of time, I've also been thinking of my grandmother. I've been revisiting her kitchen, walking through it in my imagination, smelling the delicious food she used to prepare. And I'm sitting at her table, waiting for her to join me and ask me about my life. I wish I could thank her for being there for me. I wish she was still here to answer my questions as I get older. And nowadays, when I talk to chefs or restaurateurs, the common topic that comes up most with them is their grandmothers. And usually, wistfully, a little sad by the memory, they tell me what their grandmother taught them. And almost always, they say they owe their success and their love for cooking to their grandmother's kitchen and her recipes for life and her recipes to savor. Their recipes to be passed on and they live on. But then my next question for the chef is always, do you have the recipe? Do you still make your grandmother's recipes? Mm-hmm. And sadly, most of them tell me they never got the recipe from their grandmother. I hear this over and over again. And I'm always so sorry to hear this. I think about how many recipes from our grandmothers have been lost. Today, we continue our conversations about our grandmothers. We're celebrating their wisdom and their recipes with my special guest, my old high school friend, EDIE HIGBY. EDIE had a pretty special grandmother. And so we're celebrating and honoring her grandmother today, Grandma Ruth-Catherine Naccaratto. I think we're going to call this show, if EDIE's okay with it, we're going to borrow her title. Now, EDIE sent me a letter, almost a beautifully written chapter about Grandma Ruth-Catherine Naccaratto, and it was called The Splendors of Italy. I think that's a perfect name for this episode today. Yeah. EDIE HIGBY is a best-selling children's book author, an entrepreneur, and a longtime early childhood professional. She has been in education and family service for over 20 years. She also happens to be the keeper of Grandma Naccarato's recipes. Welcome, EDIE.
Hello, Higgs. Hello, Jeremiah Higgins.
Higgs. See, you can see we're old high school friends from Higgs. Yeah. I haven't heard that name for so long.
Oh, yeah. I wouldn't know you any differently. Thank you so much for having me on the show. Just listening to you talk about grandmas. Like that just brought tears to my eyes. I wish I could have one more day with my grandma.
I do. I know. What would we all do if we had one more day with our grandmothers? I mean, what would you do with her? What would you do with her? That's a great first question.
Well,
Yeah.
I would want to cook with her, but she would want to go to the casino. She would want she would want to go to the casino. And I remember two parts of my life really with my grandma and grandpa. And then the second part of my story is just with my grandma because my grandpa passed away when I was 15. So there's this magical, beautiful um, childhood part of having my grandma and grandpa and going to their house. And I remember in your last episode, you talked about how it was so different. And I remember it being different when I was there.
Mm.
Um, but I was always so excited to be there, but it was different than when I was home, right?
So your grandfather passed away. So you had at 15, and then you had how much more
Mhm.
time with your grandmother on just
Yeah.
because of
And then
the
this whole second part with my grandma, and I got so as an adult and then having, being married and having kids and being a young mom, her being in her kitchen and being with her and spending time with her and the kids over years. I think I was 35 when she passed away. So I got to be friends with her. We got to go to the casino. We got to go to the, make trips. We got to cook. We did travel together. We did all these beautiful, amazing things together. I just remember spending time with her, and she was one of my favorite humans, certainly, but she was my best friend. Like there was just never any judgment. I could talk to her about anything. We played
That's so cool.
games, if we weren't
What was her
cooking.
game at the casino?
Well, it was when they had this the chain, you had to put coins in.
The slot machine?
Yes, yes, and it was always like the 777 or the
Yeah.
fruit or something. She would love the casinos now. I
Oh, in
mean,
that bar. That's funny.
you
My
had your cup of change, and
Yeah,
she had
sitting
I
there
went to
and
Reno with her and just love. We were girly girls, so we liked to shop, we liked to lunch, we would do each other's nails. As she got older, I would go down and see her because after my grandpa passed away, she moved from Spokane down to Tri-Cities to stay with my uncle, where she had like a little, I don't know what they call them, like the grandma's apartment in the garage type of thing, where you
uh
have your parents to take care of them in their elderly years. And I just remember going down there and spending so much time with her. And I would paint her toes because she always used to say to me, "Edie, pretty girls have pretty feet." And I'm like, well, so I would end up having to paint her toes because she couldn't do it. So, and just helping her. She always had her she always had her makeup on. She always had
what
her lip
color
gloss on.
are your
Red,
toes right now, Edie?
they are like a hot pink because I
So
did my
you
pop of pink. They're always
so
pink. They,
you've kept the
Higgs,
tradition alive.
let me tell you something. Pretty girls have pretty feet, and they are, yes, yes, nails and toes are done. Oh yeah, like
I
it's
like
a
it.
lot of
Well,
work to do this up.
yeah, it is a lot of work to
Mhm.
keep yourself up, isn't it?
Yeah, it's always
But
fun for
worth
me
it.
though. It's fun for me, and I it brings me joy. And thinking about how I didn't really get to be friends with my grandpa, and he spoke with a really heavy accent, I mean, really Italian accent. He'd always
Italian.
be like, "Edie, Edie." And he was always so happy to see us. And they were always, even my grandpa cooked. I mean, they were always cooking. And I remember early before my grandma moved, before we lost my grandpa, they were like Christmases at their house were so, I mean, magical isn't the right word. It doesn't do it justice because it was nostalgic. It was something like out
Mhm.
of um, you know, a picture or a movie or music, and you just knew that it was a special time together. And we didn't go with a bunch of toys or anything like that. Like there was, me and my sister, my brother, my parents would go. Like we were latchkey kids. My mom worked during the day, my dad worked at night, so we were always home alone. We had to get ourselves off to school in the morning, and then we, came at home at night and in that if afternoon or evening by ourselves. And we had spaghettios. It wasn't that my mom wasn't a good cook, but I didn't learn how to cook from her. I learned how to cook from my grandma. So we'd go over to their house, it'd be Christmas Eve, and there would just be this feast. Like just this feast. And it wasn't just like rigatonis or pasta, it was like fried fish and um salad and cookies and this dip. This, I mean, I call it crab dip, but she just had this amazing crab dip and um fried bread. I don't know if
Uh,
you are big.
you're
Oh, like
making
they would.
me. I'm very hungry
Oh,
right now.
Like like you could smell the food
I
from the
can smell it
car.
through. I can
I could,
smell it right now
right?
here at the
You could
studio. I
smell
can.
the
Your
food
grandmother
from the
Nacarato's
car.
kitchen is coming to life.
Oh yeah. And we could smell the food from the car and it'd be snowing. I remember how the garage door sounded and I remember how the screen door sounded when we would open and close it. And I don't know if my cousins or my siblings remember this. I remember this. I remember walking in and just being greeted with love and just everyone always so happy to see us and see me and smelling
Did they
good
listen to
food.
music for this holiday party while they're in the kitchen? Was there a little radio or was there certain
There's a big radio. Like
who
it's
did they
like
listen to?
I I remember like Frank Sinatra being
Yeah,
on,
yeah.
but I'm sure that
Italian.
they, yes, always like that Italian type, like stuff I didn't know. I think at some point I might have heard some Eagles maybe in there or Bee Gees. I don't know.
Well,
But their stereo
describe
was huge.
that's
Their
awesome.
stereo,
I'm
it
there.
was huge.
You
It
painted a
probably the
perfect.
biggest thing in their front room. It was their couch. It was had a fireplace going, and then they had this massive stereo that played records.
Yeah, do you remember? I remember those. Almost like they were like big wooden boxes
Yeah,
and with they were
yeah,
carved beautifully and they had
yeah.
speakers.
Just
Yeah, I remember those.
piece of
Yeah.
art. It was a piece of art. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
Uh,
remember, go ahead, there really wasn't anything special about their house. Like I don't mean that in a negative way. Like it was, they had a nice house. It was warm. It was safe. It was welcoming. But my grandma had a small kitchen. My grandma and grandpa both had I mean, it was a small kitchen. It wasn't like I love grandeur. I'm like, I want presentation. I want, all the big things. It wasn't, that isn't what made it so special. It was just like the small kitchen. It was
it was a
the
home.
food. Yeah, it was a home. And you know what else, Jeremiah? I thought about this, really thought about this before I was doing the show, because I've always had, I don't know what made me think of this, but I always have had um like big tables, but long tables, like rectangular or square, like fancy,
Hmm.
bougie, fancy tables, because I love to set them and have presentation. And my grandma and grandpa always had a big table, but it was round. And do you know what happens at a round table?
You can all see each other and talk.
You
Yeah.
see each other. And the
Interesting.
table was not set. I mean, she had pretty things out, but part of the experience being at Grandma and Grandpa's house was we got to go to their china closet and we got to pick out like she had several sets of china. She had real silver. She had the napkins. She probably had the linen on her, like the tablecloth on her table. But we got to set the table. Like that was part of being a family and coming
Tradition.
together.
Yeah.
Tradition,
That was
absolutely.
your input. So
Yeah,
everybody had a part in this
everybody had a
celebration, this
part.
family. I love it.
And
I
we
love
were so excited. We were so excited to do it. Like we're probably fighting over, I want the red china. And then she had this red. I always wanted the red because it was so like Barbie, like I would just want to play Barbies with it. It was so fancy and just this, you weren't supposed to touch it until we were eating dinner like at Christmas time. And I just remember that and the real nuts, the real nuts that you had to crack with a
yeah.
cracker. And we always had
What a
like wine.
beautiful
My grandpa,
memory.
yes, like even little kids, my grandparents would just be like, have a little vino. Like I'm not gonna like endorse like alcohol, but I remember that. It was just like that. I don't think in the Italian culture it was taboo to have wine at, the breakfast, lunch, or dinner table even with kids. So
Yeah, I
pretty
remember
special,
I had some wine too in a little cup at one point. I don't
baby.
Thanksgiving or something like that. And
Yeah.
it instantly went to my head and I
That's
distinctly
how they put
remember.
us to sleep. Then they're just
Yeah,
like,
yeah, exactly. But I fell right off the chair as soon as I drank it, like on the ground hard. I still remember like the fall and everything. Wasn't it going to be the first or the last time that I fell down?
oh,
Too much
friend,
wine.
we've all been there. You're not
Yeah.
alone. Yeah.
You painted such a real vivid picture of this experience and brought it to life so well, Edie.
Thank you.
Bring
Thank
her to
you.
life for me.
Thank you.
Describe your grandmother a little bit more. Was she a tall woman,
Oh.
short, like
She
classic
once
Italian look, or like,
the classic Italian, like, and I don't want to even like say it in a judgy way, but she was probably, I think I'm 5'1", 5'2". I'm like 5'1". My sister is like
I like how
4 feet
you couldn't
11.
even you
Yeah,
you went to 5'2" and you're like, oh, I can't lie.
I
I'm
think
fine.
I shrunk. I shrunk at some point.
You couldn't even stay
And after
committed.
having all those kids, my 2 kids shrunk me. But I think Tanya's like 4'11", and my mom and my grandma are both like 4 feet. Like they're just these tiny little Italian
My grandmother
people.
was too.
Just this, I mean, you could just wrap your arms around her. And I mean, she probably came to hear me, and I would just go. The first thing I would do when I come in the house, just wrap my arm around her and say, "Hi,
So
grandma."
you were tall to your grandmother
I'm just probably
in
the tallest
comparison.
one in my family.
At almost 5'2".
Yeah, yeah. We'll say 5'2".
Well,
Yeah, and she just had this wicked smile
yeah.
and this and just sh- you didn't always know she was in the room, but she was always watching. And I I think because what I said to you in my letter was we learned so much at the dinner table more than we do out of books or, being a
Hmm.
teacher with kids for so long. And one of my favorite things to do with kids is have kids in the kitchen or at lunchtime with them and all the stories they tell me. But I remember my grandma and grandpa, I don't think I ever saw them kiss. I don't think I ever saw them even maybe hug, but I I knew there was like this quiet love between them. He or she, they wouldn't leave the room without letting the other one know gently, like just a hand pat or a swipe of the arm or just a touch on the back or a pat on the leg. You always knew they always knew that was their body language. The one always knew the other was leaving or entering. My grandpa would come in from the garden or out in the garage. He was a carpenter and a gardener. But if he came in from outside, the first thing my grandma would always say is, and his name was Robert. Everyone called him Bob except for my grandma. So she was like, Bob or Robert, can I get you anything? Do you need anything? Can I get you anything? Just in this very kind, gentle way of taking care of people. And then my grandpa, every time he would go to town or go to the farm to get cheese or like fresh everything, eggs, he wouldn't go to the store. He'd go to the farm or this deli he knew about and he'd say, Ruth, can I bring you back anything? Can I bring you back? Do you need anything from town before I go? Like they're just always taking care of each other that way. And I think that's such a beautiful love
Yeah.
story. Wasn't
Sweet.
Yeah.
How long were they together, did you say?
They were married. Oh, I think they were married over 60 years. I want to say they were married 62 years. But after we last, I mean, to be able to say that
Yeah, it's
after we
incredible.
lost grandpa, she had all this time without him and still just living her best life, going to the casino, cooking. She said she had guys calling her. She's like, I'm not going out on that date. You know what I mean? Even at her age. I mean, I think she passed away when she was just short of 90. I think she was 87, 88
So
in
she
January
enjoyed
2005.
that time alone at the end of her life where it's
Yeah.
like, now it's for me. Now it's my time.
Yeah.
She had
Yeah.
definitely put in
Yeah.
time in a relationship.
Yes.
Can you
Yes.
imagine just knowing how relationships are so
Yeah.
much work a lot of times? I mean, sometimes they're easy, but there's ups and downs, and 60
Oh
years
boy.
of ups and downs, and
Well,
the things that a person goes through or two people through together.
yeah.
They really had a
Yeah. Yes, and yeah, my grandpa died of, he passed away of lung cancer, like he was a smoker. So they both smoked for I don't know how many years, but for 20, 30 years, he always had his pipe. Because smoking was sexy. We didn't know back then, but
Mhm.
my grandma stopped smoking after that, and to the day she died, she said she always wanted a cigarette. So don't smoke, no smoking. But just the love story between them, I just think there's all this
Mhm.
how people think that they have to, no, I'm a big fan of public, affection, but it just doesn't have to be that way. And no matter what, you are planting seeds in your family, what your children see or don't see, whether you know it or not.
Yeah.
Because we see everything. We,
And the most important thing for them to see, I think, is that connection, like that you mentioned, touched his
yes.
elbow or touched his back, and I'm just that's real subtle,
Yep.
beautiful dance that
I
shows that they love each other when they don't
Yeah.
need to prove anything else, and the kindness that they gave each other.
Yeah.
Well, you said in that letter to me about your grandmother um, that your education for life really began in your Italian grandmother Naccarato's kitchen.
Yeah.
You
It sure did.
can you elaborate on that a little bit? Like, what are some of the things that you learned about
So,
your own life now that?
uh, but I didn't, at the time, you don't really know that this is what you're learning. You don't know. I look back now and she taught me so much of how to be a woman, how to take care of a home, how to cook for your family. But it wasn't just like I can make a meal. Anyone can make a meal, but it was just like I couldn't. She taught me how to cook. She taught me how to add ingredients and put things into a sauce or a salad or go get vegetables out of the garden. But it was the process of taking care of your family and showing love. And like for me, that's the first thing I still do to this day is cook for somebody. I'm just like, let me get something for you. Let me put something together for you. It's one of my biggest joys. But one of the great lessons I think with my grandma is so much history. Like she talked about World War II and she was always so grateful. I think that's where I absolutely get my gratitude and the appreciation for
Mhm.
everything. Every little thing was used. Like they didn't go to the store and overbuy things. They grew their own vegetables. They like I said, went to the farmer's market or went wherever they needed to get their fresh eggs, made their own bread. The French bread you buy in a deli right now, she could just whip up in a hot minute. she it was just everything was so she was so grateful for every little thing and gratitude, and you just take every little crumb of salt and you make sure and do something with it. And when she would make like her rigatoni sauce, she would freeze it, so if even if she didn't have time to cook and we were coming over, she'd pop it out of the freezer, and it was always just like this home cooked meal for us.
Mhm.
But I that's what I learned from her was just she and I was trying to think of like things she said to me. It wasn't any one thing. It was a whole bunch of things over a period of time and a lifetime of being her friend and her granddaughter, of just being like, that's okay, Edie.
But
Just like it's you know what I mean? It doesn't matter. Like
yeah,
me, I just be stressing out about whatever, like my next I don't know, something. Or a bill as I got older wasn't being paid, or she had this magical way of just being like, that's really not the stuff that matters.
yeah.
Stuff that matters is that we get to stay together and we get to be together today and have a meal together. She always had this way of acknowledging you for you. Do you know what I mean? She would, even when I didn't see her for periods of time before I could go see her in the Tri-Cities or something, she always sent me a card. She always like wrote me a letter. I love the way she used to write my name. She still sent me like $5 or $10 on my birthday, even when I was like 30 years old. She always remembered the kids' birthdays. If I couldn't afford an outfit, like when my daughter was little, like I was young and dumb. I was 19 when I had her. Listening to Aaron French, I just could so much resonated with me.
Mhm.
College dropout is like, oh dear, face plant. But if I couldn't, I wanted this Easter outfit for Ashley, and I couldn't wing it or didn't have it, and she marched me right down to Kmart, and
Mhm.
she bought Ashley her little Easter Sunday dress, and just made sure that Ashley had that outfit and that I felt good about it, and we got to spend our time together and pictures and reading books and just enjoying life and not worrying about the small stuff. That was my biggest lesson from her.
So through her cooking and the process of preparing meals, through that time you're standing next to each other in the kitchen, those hours, minutes and hours that pass over the years,
Yeah.
uh, subtly you learned lessons about love and what was
Yeah.
important to you, that you were able to, that you're to this day um, able to provide for your family and for those that you love. That's
It's that
really.
resilience. Thank you.
Mhm.
Resiliency piece, perseverance.
What did we got to take a break? I've went really
Okay.
long, but this is such a good
Yeah.
description, a good conversation.
Thank
The
you.
what did her kitchen smell like? Like, can you go bring back
Uh,
those
I'm going to tell
aromas?
you. I'm going to tell you. So
I
for
imagine
it,
fresh bread and tomatoes and
mm,
garlic.
when you walk into like a bakery or like the dough. But for me, it was the butter and the garlic. Like you could smell butter, basil, and garlic, and it'll hit me if I'm even cooking something, or if I don't know I'm going to the right restaurant or something, and I will smell. that butter, garlic, basil. And I'm like, oh, I smell that. Ooh, it's cooking garlic and butter right now. And you've seen the
Grandma's
sign
right
in my
back there with
kitchen.
you.
Oh, is butter and eggs, because my grandma always said butter and eggs can fix anything. If you have butter and you have eggs, you can
Yeah,
put together anything, and that's the
she's
truth.
a wise woman. Great lessons. Okay,
Yeah.
so let's take that real quick break. Don't want to go
Okay.
anywhere, but let's pause for a second. Let me tell you where you can find EDIE Higbye. Well, she's a best-selling author. She's got a children's book out, but she's got an upcoming children's book out. Love the title. It's called Me Oh My. It's a pasta pie. Be coming out next year, hopefully. She's also writing a book, Practicing Joy, Living Life Happy. 2025 is the release year for next year, maybe May 2025. You can keep up with Edie all the time, every day, through her website and her blog at practicingjoy.net. She's also working on a cookbook, a recipe cookbook, I think based around your family and your cooking with your grandmother. Edie, do I have that right?
You sure do, because when you're talking about some of those lost recipes, that's what prompted my idea for the book. I was like, I've got to get this stuff down. My kids don't know how to make this
Yeah.
sauce. They
Well,
don't know how to make any of this.
my mom and my niece, obviously my mom is her grandmother, my brother's daughter, she comes over for Thanksgiving, and my mom makes these crescent rolls that I've never had
Mm.
anything like it ever. My mom makes these, right? But she has taught Ella, her granddaughter, how to make them, and they stand there and they roll them, so if God forbid anything happened to my mom, we wouldn't know how to make those, and that recipe would be lost. And I think that's anybody out there listening right now, if your grandmother or your mother taught you something that's part of the family recipe tree, I mean, Thanksgiving and Christmas would not be the same without those crescent rolls. They wouldn't be the
So
same without my
true.
mother either, but obviously, but
So
they,
true.
you like, if those dishes start to drop off, I
Hmm.
think the dynamic changes in the family, and they should be kept alive. So,
They should.
Savoring Sundays, what a great title.
Thank you.
Celebrating Family Traditions by EDIE Higbye. It's coming out next year as well. You've got a lot of releases next year. Keep up again with her, practicingjoy.net. Follow her on her blog, and all her social media is there as well. There's so much more that you're doing, but I'll save it for the
Thank
next
you.
break. We'll take that quick break. We're going to come back and we're going to talk about the Naccaratos.
Yay. Thanks, Jeremiah.
We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.